All right, so the last time I read, Helmuth was very, very upset because he ran into Brother Warbs, who was tortured at a concentration camp by the Nazis. His fingers were broken and were not allowed to heal correctly. They just left him. So they were gnarly, but not in a good way. Gnarly. So he wants to figure out a next step. Now, again, we know that the result of all of this is going to be Helmuth in jail, right? Okay, so we're actually 30 pages from the end. No, I'm not reading 30 pages. That's a 30-minute read aloud. There's a lot of author's notes that we're going to definitely look at because they're important. But we'll see. Okay. Another Christmas comes and goes, and the holiday feels gloomier than ever. Carl's away visiting an aunt who lives on a farm in Ludelson in order to bring home food for his family. In the city, food rations have grown more meager. Coupons are needed for everything, from flour to shoes, and yet the Nazis continue to press for war donations, more woolen clothing for the soldiers, and German marks to buy cannons, tanks, and airplanes. Helmuth attends a church dance on New Year's Eve, but doesn't enjoy himself. All he can think about is the war and his pamphlets. Dances feel like a waste of time. He can't afford to lose time. Still, he must practice caution. At work, he grows friendlier with another apprentice, Gerard Duer, who rolls his eyes at the reports on the RPG when the Nazis announce that over 70 million woolen articles have been collected for soldiers on the Eastern Front. And yet our soldiers are still freezing, says Duer disgustedly. Helmuth is delighted at this sign, and he invites Duer home to listen to the BBC. Duer is enthusiastic about Helmuth's shortwave radio, and he asks to listen again. After several more visits, Helmuth grows more sure of Duer. He shows him his latest pamphlet titled, I Figured Out Everything. Duer reads the pamphlet aloud. It's been 1 month since the German radio and newspapers boasted the results of the clothing drive. Over 70 million articles of clothing. But where is this clothing? The soldiers on the Eastern Front and the soldiers in the far north haven't received them. They do not write home about it, only that they are freezing, and they are waiting in vain for warm winter clothes. Duer grins at the last sentence. Only time will tell if the Nazis have swindled the German people out of their woolen and furs. He looks at Helmuth. This is amazing. Whoever wrote this has the guts to say what everyone is thinking. I wrote it, says Helmuth proudly. It's a chain letter. Duer listens softly, looks at Helmuth with keen admiration. Listen, he says in a low voice. I know 2 printing apprentices in Kiel. They can be trusted to print pamphlets, hundreds of pamphlets, after hours. Helmuth can scarcely believe his good fortune. A printing press. His mind dances with the thought of hundreds, maybe thousands of leaflets scattered throughout Germany. How does a printing press change things for him?
His paper is going to get quicker. Put all over.
Yep. So instead of having to copy by hand or copy just like one at a time using that carbon paper, he's able to make hundreds and thousands of flyers at one time, and he'll be able to send that off to wherever it needs to go. A few days later in January, another good sign comes during a class in for Bieber House apprentices. Helmuth spots Werner Kranz jotting down French vocabulary words and grows curious. He wonders why Werner is so interested in the French. Perhaps Werner feels sympathy for the 2 million French prisoners of war the Nazis have forced into labor in Germany. It's no secret that the French hate Hitler for what he has done to their country. An idea takes root. If Werner will translate the leaflets into French, perhaps Helmuth can smuggle them to the French prisoners. From there, the leaflets may get into the hands of the French resistance. This way, the French and perhaps the whole world will learn that many Germans don't support Hitler in the war. It's a bold move, Helmuth knows, but he has heard about a group of communists working underground who have connections. Helmuth approaches Werner Kranz quietly. Will you translate something into French for me? It depends on what it is. First, you must promise not to say anything. Werner narrows his eyes. First, you must show me. Helmuth won't show him, not without a promise. He sticks his hands into his pockets, walks away whistling. He can feel Werner's curiosity. That's good. Let curiosity simmer. A few days later, Helmuth tries again. This time, he brings Duer along as he shows Werner a brochure. Werner grows white around his mouth as he reads over the pamphlet. No way, he says, shoving the pamphlet back at Helmuth. I'm too busy for this. Helmuth eyes Werner closely. Werner looks angry. Has Helmuth made a terrible mistake? His hands shake as he folds the leaflet and slips it back into his pocket. At that moment, their boss, Heinrich Malms, passes the door and pokes his head in. What's going on here? Duer elbows Werner, a warning to keep quiet. Helmuth pretends to be unruffled. I hoped Werner could help me with a little homework with something I didn't understand, he tells his boss. Herr Malms stares at Helmuth and then Werner. Get to work, he says at last. We don't pay you to socialize. Helmuth and Duer return to their desk. Helmuth feels Malms' eyes on him, wishes he would stop staring. Helmuth buries himself in his work, but he can't concentrate, not with Herr Malms' eyes boring into his back. February 5th. 2:30. The office grows suddenly quiet as two Gestapo agents stride purposefully through the office door. Helmuth Hebner, says the taller agent of Helmuth. Helmuth's mouth turns dry. He licks his lips, nods, and says yes. You know why we are here, says the agent. It isn't a question. It's a statement. Helmuth glances at Werner, who doesn't look up, only stares at the green file folder on his desk. Herr Malms stands in the doorway looking gleeful. Helmuth understands the look. Herr Malms is a man who has done his duty. Come with us, says the agent. He nods to Duer. You too. Helmuth goes for his coat, but the agents yank him back, push him toward the door. He falters, recovers his step. Outside, the boys slide into the back seat of a black Mercedes, are swallowed up inside, flanked by two Gestapo officers. Back in prison. With each tick of the pocket watch, Helmuth's heart pounds harder. Herr Rank glances down at the official-looking paper. He begins to read slowly and clearly, enunciating each word importantly. On the 11th of August, 1942, the court found Helmuth Hebner guilty of listening to a foreign radio station and distributing the news heard in a connection with conspiracy to commit high treason in treasonable support of the enemy. Must not breathe, must keep hope swallowed inside, must not let hope out of throat. He is sentenced to death and the loss of civil rights during his lifetime. The words begin to shoot around the cell, exploding off the walls, striking Helmuth like bullets. Bang! The National Minister of Justice has decreed that there will be no clemency. If there's clemency, that means he would be forgiven. Yep. Bang! Justice will run its course. Bang! The execution of the judgment will take place on 27 October 1942 after 8 p.m. tonight. The floor buckles beneath Helmuth and the walls waver. The single light bulb overhead throbs, hurts his eyes, burns into his skull. He closes his eyes, squeezes them shut, won't let the tears escape, wills them away. Helmuth opens his eyes. The men are still there. The prison guards grip their truncheons, pulsing, pulsing, pulsing. Have you any final requests? Asks Herr Rank. Helmuth licks his dry lips. Yes, he whispers hoarsely. I would like to write letters to my family. So be it, says Herr Rank. Their job done, the men turn on their heels and one by one leave the cell single file. Slam, click. The cell door bolts shut. Helmuth reaches for the wall behind him, sinks to the floor. He clutches his belly, lets out a deep wail. Hope flies from his chest, flutters around the room, and beats against the window. 4:30 p.m., Helmuth stands in the police interrogation room waiting. He takes in the padded black leather door, gleaming wooden desk, green blotter, file folders, straight-backed wooden chairs. Okay, I jumped out of prison, so we're back to right after he got arrested. Okay, sorry. Start that over. 4:30 p.m., Helmuth stands in the police interrogation room waiting. He takes in the padded black leather door, gleaming wooden desk, green blotter, file folders, straight-backed wooden chairs, the slightly burned smell of real coffee, 2 white china cups, 2 saucers, 2 silver teaspoons. It all looks so normal, civilized, like a banker's office. He wonders if they will beat him, wonders if he can hold up, remembers his promise to Carl and Rudy. No names. Remembers Brother Warbs. You'll admit to anything to stop the pain. Shakes the thought from his head. He will take one step at a time. He will find out what they know. Admit nothing. Helmuth hears the stamp of feet in the hall. 2 crisp Heil Hitlers. The door swings open. The same 2 agents enter, Wangman and Musner. Helmuth has learned and barely acknowledge him. The taller man, Musner, sets his briefcase on the table with a thump, unbuckles it, shuffles several papers into the neat pile on his desk. Helmuth's stomach tightens. Flyers, his flyers. Sit, says Wangman. He's shorter, more squarely built. Helmuth sits. Wangman stands next to Helmuth, arms folded. Musner picks up the first leaflet, waves it carelessly as if a simple grocery list. This was found in the telephone booth in the Lusenweg Strudenstrasse at 9 o'clock in the morning. He fans up the others. The rest were found in stairwells and mailboxes at Sudenstrasse 205, all brought in by good citizens. Wangman leans in. His breath smells of onions. Do you know why you've been arrested? Helmuth looks at him blankly, hopes. You're accused of distributing enemy propaganda. Do you have any idea what this means for you, distributing enemy propaganda? Helmuth corrects him. Allegedly. Wangman's fist smashes into Helmuth's face, knocks him on the floor. A black boot kicks him in the stomach twice. Helmuth curls, knees to his chest, arms shielding his head, gasping for air. You want the government to fall, but who's fallen now? Shrieks Wangman. He kicks Helmuth in the ribs again and again. Get up, he says. Now let's see how you stand. Helmuth wobbles. He reaches for the chair. It hurts to stand straight. He tries to take a deep breath. His ribs burn. You might as well confess, said Musner. Things will go better for you. The way they're going better for your friend Gerard Duer. He told us everything. That shocks Helmuth. Not Duer. I can't be. It's a trap, he tells himself. You don't believe us, says Musner. You think it's a trap? Musner flips open a file, selects a typed sheet, reads from it. One day, it could have been the middle of January, Huebner handed me a typewritten paper and asked me to read it. I read the paper, and without saying anything, I hid it and took it home. I could tell at once it was inflammatory writing against Germany. Helmuth's eyes fill up, as though he's underwater. Musner looks at Helmuth, and when he speaks, his words sound underwater too. Your friend is a good German who only wants to do his duty. He continues to read from Duer's statement. At home, I locked the paper in a box because I wanted to gather evidence so that at the right time I could denounce Huebner. The word rings in Helmuth's ears. Denounce, denounce, denounce. Musner continues reading. I realize that I was wrong, and I now fall under suspicion for having cooperated with Huebner. This is not the case, however, and I want to clarify that I merely wanted to collect evidence against him. Musner stops, clasps his hands together, rests them on a desk. Have you anything to say? Helmuth's heart sinks as he realizes that Duer denounced him in order to save himself. You'll admit to anything to stop the pain. That's what Brother Warbs had said. What did the Gestapo do to Duer? Helmuth sees Karl's grinning face, Rudy's worried face. He feels their hands, 3 hands, one on top of the other, shaking on their promise. Agreed. No names. I'm ready to confess, says Helmuth. I take full responsibility.